Hello everyone, this is part 52 of What If Naruto Passed the Genin test, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. So when do we leave? Asked Kyuubi, shaking out his golden fur as Naruto lay on his back inside the fox's massive cage. Naruto wiped his hand across his brow and sat up enough to look at his demonic partner. 2 more hours, said the ninja, then we go out on patrol with this Harbin character. The plan is to locate Akatsuki's army, or armies if they've split up, and track their movements while sending the information back to Gaara. Kyuubi sniffed the air. Do you trust this Harbin character? Naruto shook his head. No, he said bluntly. I don't trust him any more than I trust anyone in a mask like that. However, if it turns out that he's telling the truth about Iwa being ready, willing, and able to help us, then his help has been invaluable and I want to make sure he stays alive. What did you think about him? I never sensed him. Remember that I can't personally interact with your world anymore, Kit. Naruto sat up and leaned back on his elbows. Too bad, I would have appreciated your input. Wait a second, said Naruto, raising one eyebrow at the demon, who drew back and perched up on all fours. There's something you're not telling me, he said. What do you mean? I can't personally interact. I'm glad you caught that, said Kyuubi, beginning to growl his unique chortling laugh. I may not be able to help you with my chakra directly, but I think I've found a way around your allergy. Naruto quickly got to his feet. And, he probed, what have you come up with? Simple, Kyuubi said. The solution came to me in something of an epiphany. Honestly, I'm surprised and a little disappointed that you didn't come up with it yourself. The demon's tone took on an air of mild condescension. Right, said Naruto, stupid humans and all that. What's the solution? Just because you can't summon and use my chakra at will anymore doesn't mean you can't summon it. Naruto waited for a moment, expecting the fox to continue. When Kyuubi remained silent, waiting for Naruto to figure it out on his own, Naruto took a step back and looked at the ground. Kyuubi, I think maybe you've been caged up a little too long, said Naruto. Kyuubi chortled. Just the answer I expected, and while I wholeheartedly agree with you, you've missed my point. Naruto, what is it that makes a summoning technique unique from all other ninja arts? Where are you going with this? Kyuubi looked at Naruto and shook his head once. You're not going to get the answer out of me without at least thinking about it on your own. Now, what makes summoning some frog or a slug or a snake unique from throwing some giant fireball at your enemy? Naruto thought for a second. Well, with ninjutsu and genjutsu, a ninja uses either his or someone else's chakra to somehow manipulate the world around him, creating a blast of fire or spinning an illusion, something like that. When it comes to summoning techniques, though, an entirely new and autonomous entity is. Naruto's tone took on a new and curious timbre. Kyuubi, are you implying that I could summon you? The giant fox shook his head. No, he said without any sound of distaste. While I wish that were possible, it would take more chakra than any living human could ever hope to muster, and I learned long ago to stop beating my head against these bars. However, that is not to say that my chakra is completely cut off to you. Kyuubi, said Naruto, you're going to have to help me out here. I'm not getting whatever it is you're trying to say. Fine, let me spell it out with small words for you, Kyuubi chuckled, obviously enjoying his own wittiness. One of your summoning techniques works on the principle of the instant transportation of some entity from one location to another. Generally, the body being moved is one rooted in another domain or an entirely different plane of existence. When Orochimaru revived your mate, for instance, he effectively summoned her soul from another realm parallel to yours and mine. In that case, it was some form of afterlife. Who is to say that, if Orochimaru can summon a spirit from some place as difficult to access as hell, that you couldn't summon a spirit from a place as accessible as your own mind? Naruto sighed and sat back down. But you just said there's no way to get you out of that cage, said Naruto. So dense, muttered Kyuubi. I'm proposing that you summon one of my little brothers. What? Asked Naruto without any discernible amount of articulate thought. You have brothers and sisters, replied Kyuubi. I never before gave them much thought. Most of them are simply mindless, ravenous, bothersome king machines. Like the big brother, Naruto jested. But Kyuubi cracked his teeth together with a pealing bolt of thunder that made Naruto rattle from head to toe. Some of them are intelligent and wickedly talented fighters who would be more than obliged to do my bidding, and if my bidding is for them to do your bidding, then that would be their pleasure. My thought is to summon one or two of the more powerful of my little siblings, endow them with as much of my chakra as they can handle, then keep them here on standby for you to summon should the need arise. I doubt you'd be able to actively use the chakra they possess without triggering that reaction, but it would at least provide you with a pair of loyal, powerful bodyguards. Kyuubi, Naruto stammered. If there's even the slightest chance that could work, it's brilliant. I don't think I ever would have come up with that, even if I did know you had underlings. I've yet to test it, but I have a sister and a brother in mind who I think would serve us flawlessly. Also, I see no reason why it would fail. Our only problem arises when you try to use my chakra directly. To summon another fox, or set of foxes, all you would require is your own chakra. Mine would be completely inactive until the others actually arrived. Kyuubi, that really is an incredible idea, said Naruto. Even if I have to keep my distance from them once they're summoned, it still gives us both a much better chance than what we'd have without your help. Naruto paused for only a second to look up towards the ceiling, before turning back to Kyuubi. This is almost too much to be real. First the news about Iwa and now renewed access to your chakra. Things are finally starting to look like they might be going our way. Agreed, nodded the fox, noting Naruto's glances skyward. The odds still aren't in our favor and, as you humans sometimes say, it's going to be an uphill battle. I'm confident that you can see it through. You have many of the traits your ancestors possessed and the Maibans persevered through more than this. Thanks, Naruto acknowledged. So are you going to start conducting interviews with possible helpers or something? He asked. I was going to begin the process soon, yes. In the meantime though, why don't you go and spend some quality time with your mate? You could both probably use the time together. Naruto raised an eyebrow, ushering me out so quickly. It occurs to me that we, as in all of us, everyone you know, might not have much time left and it wouldn't be unwise for you to spend it with people who are important to you. Awfully something of you, Kyuubi, said Naruto. Genial maybe. Are those emotions I detect? Kyuubi ruffled his fur and looked down at Naruto, his liquid garnet eyes churning with thought. Maybe, said the fox. Should I not care? SC. When Naruto regained consciousness, fully awake and boasting energy to spare, he was lying on his side in bed, next to Ino underneath the light comforter Gaara's aides had provided for his guest room. Ino was breathing deeply and rhythmically, leaving Naruto to assume she was very much asleep. It was less than an hour before the desert sunrise, and through the windows Naruto already saw the harbingers of dawn beginning to light the very tops of the tallest buildings in Suna when Ino, who was already pressed against Naruto, stirred only a little and rolled more into him. Good morning, beautiful, said Naruto when Ino's eyes fluttered. He smiled and rubbed her arm. Naruto. Ino mumbled, her tone questioning and unsure. Who else would it be? Asked the Uzumaki with a grin. You were expecting someone else maybe. Ino's eyes widened as she took a deep breath and looked around, trying to wake up more fully. Oh, she muttered, sounding surprised and simultaneously relieved. That was an odd dream. Ino looked up at Naruto and grinned, sorry, not totally awake yet. Take all the time you need, said Naruto. I almost wish you'd woken me up a while ago, said the kunoichi. You're leaving soon, aren't you? Naruto nodded once and sat up in bed. Ino mirrored him and reflexively pulled the sheet up with her to cover herself. Harbin and I are going out to try and get a fix on the crane's location and troop movements. I think Gaara might want me to keep an eye on our newest friend. Ino paused. Do you think we can trust him, Harbin I mean? He seems almost a little too connected and friendly for me. I know, said Naruto. I'm not entirely sure I believe him, but if it turns out that his information about Iwa is correct then that will be all the proof I need. This could be just the trick we need to turn all of this around. I knew you'd come up with something, said Ino. You always do. Naruto grinned. You're kind, but I didn't come up with any of this. It all just fell right in my lap. Even so, said Ino, you're still the one who's going to pull it all off. I know you will. You've always had the most uncanny ability to get through things. Maybe, but I've always turned out a little worse for wear. I don't think so, said Ino. Now, how about we get up and around? Naruto nodded again. Sounds good. It's going to be a full day, I think. He stood up and pulled open one of the drawers in the dresser beside the bed, looking for the outfit Gaara had prepared for him. Quietly Ino got onto her knees and snuck towards Naruto as he turned his back towards her. Not exactly what I had in mind, she said, putting her hands on his shoulders and tugging him back. Whoa, Naruto yelped, falling backwards onto the bed as Ino dodged out of the way, then rolled on top of him, pinning his hands to the sheets. SC. The hawk sported feathers red as blood with blackened edges and looked at Naruto with one crimson eye as he stared at the bird, reflecting the early morning sunlight in a flare of red. The miniature scroll Harbin was strapping to his hawk's leg looked too small to contain any relevant information. What's written on the scroll? Asked Naruto, looking between Harbin and his messenger. Nothing, said the assassin from Iwa. Nothing. Naruto probed. It was shortly after dawn, the time of day when most people in most other villages would just have been getting up to greet the new day. In Suna, however, namely by the east gate where Naruto, Gaara, Harbin, and Sasuke were gathered, activity had not ceased throughout the night, and now that the sun was up, so was anyone else who had been sleeping. It would be impossible to explain exactly what everyone was doing, for each individual seemed to be going about their own task with all of the dedication of a maiden bee, but to any desert eagles flying over Suna the scene below would I'm sure resemble a disturbed colony of ants looking for food before the rains, as the various people and ninja hurriedly went about their tasks in response to the news that Akatsuki was on its way. The scroll is chakra encoded with a message to my subordinates, said Harbin. Anyone who didn't know the exact jutsu to perform to activate the seal would only see a blank piece of paper. Cool, said Sasuke, grinning and watching the hawk. You'll have to show me how to do that sometime. The youngest Uchiha's spirits had been gradually lifting ever since he heard the news of Iwa's potential support for Suna. When news had come out that the Earth country might not only be well, but also might be able to support an offensive against the Crane and Akatsuki, many people had immediately brightened and begun working with renewed vigor. It's easy enough, said Harbin. You could probably figure out how to do it if you thought for a bit. Gaara cleared his tea, standing, as always, with his arms folded in front of his chest. No heroics, said the Kazekage as Harbin threw his hand up and the hawk took flight, sailing into the distance in a matter of seconds. I'd appreciate having both of you back in one piece. Map the crane's movements, then get back here as soon as you can. There's a lot of preparation with which we could use your help. You'll have all the backup you need before you know it, said Harbin calmly. An emissary from Iwa should be arriving in 3 hours. Once he gets here you should be able to outline the initial stages of this resistance. Harbin turned to Gaara and addressed him directly. Kazekage-sama, it occurs to me that many of us, possibly all of us, could be killed very quickly and without much warning. I know Naruto-kun has left his steward to take over his responsibilities should he be killed, but what preparations have you made? Who will lead should something happen to you? Gaara dropped his hands to his side. Sakura-san is my replacement also. Given the competence she has shown, I can think of no one in my own ranks who would lead as well as she would. Sakura-san is a good choice for you both, said Harbin. Shall we be on our way, Naruto-kun? Naruto nodded and shook the sand away from the base of his heavy leather cloak. I'm ready anytime, he answered. Good luck, said Sasuke. You too, Naruto smiled, turning towards the gate in sync with Harbin, setting off quickly and sprinting out of the city like fugitives. Neither one looked back as two operators began rapidly closing the gate behind the two ninja, sealing off the city again. If they've stayed in one large group they'd still be 2 days away, said Harbin as soon as Suna was a mile or so behind them. Though I fear they might have broken off into separate strike groups, in which case we could be looking at invasion in a matter of hours. Let's hope they've stayed together, said Naruto, raising his voice to speak over the desert wind howling around them. Where exactly do you think we should begin looking for them? Well, the canyons and crags which line the perimeter of the wind country allow for easy access to Suna through only half a dozen locations from the northeast, and the crossing points are relatively clustered. We'd be best served by moving to the eastern border of the wind and working our way up through each individual pass and bridge, looking for ninja passing through them. Naruto nodded and both ninja began running faster, until each step was kicking up a small cloud of sand and dusty clay behind him as the composition of the earth slowly changed. They move almost due west for more than an hour before the high and rocky crags began to rise up in the distance. It was not long before the two ninja had reached the Wind Country's border to the east with the river country. The countryside was still covered in sand and clay, but the ground was firmer now, supporting the sharper slopes of the crags and the steep slopes of the canyons that stretched out before Naruto and Harbin. Naruto paused as he and his partner reached the edge of one of the canyons, a gorge in the earth apparently many hundreds of meters deep and wide enough that Naruto questioned whether he would be able to cross it without his leap falling short. I never knew there were canyons like this along the wind's border, said the blonde ninja. These natural defenses are one of the primary reasons that Suna, a village in the desert with very few natural resources, is as secure as it is, said the ninja in the mask. Invasions are rare because there are only so many places that a hostile force can enter, and until the war with Sound, Suna's garrisons kept those strategic points very secure. I thought that the pass we came from on our way from Konoha was something unique, said Naruto, scanning the edges of the vast canyon and seeing nothing particularly interesting. It was always the most direct route, so I guess I ignored other ways in and out. Harbin pointed towards the north. The first crossing point is several miles ahead, and if the crane is invading from the river country as I suspect they might be, these next few passes would be the fastest way in. Naruto grinned. We'll see them coming long before anyone wait. He paused. Naruto quickly began running over his limited knowledge of the Wind Country's geography and the layout of the surrounding nations as Harbin fell silent. What is it, Naruto-kun? Asked the ninja in the mask, turning to the newly appointed Hokage. Is something amiss? Naruto glanced at Harbin and turned towards the north. Why would they come from the river country? Simple, responded Harbin. Moving through the river country provides them with the greatest advantage, should they be seeking the element of surprise at least. Gaara and his guards would likely expect the invasion to come from the north, where the country's natural defenses are weak. If the crane came from the east, though, they would have the advantage of catching Suna from a direction the defenders wouldn't think to look to. Naruto paused. All right, he said quietly. That makes sense, I guess. But when Gaara called all of his ninja back to Suna to guard the village, that left virtually the entire border undefended. The crane wouldn't encounter any resistance no matter which way they came from until they got to Suna itself. Harbin nodded, obviously exaggerating the motion to compensate for the mask hiding his facial features. True, but Iwa is to the north. Naruto cut his traveling partner off as his own train of thought caught up. And if they're readying themselves to move against the crane, then it would be wise for Akatsuki to try and avoid being caught between both Suna and Iwa. Very good, said Harbin. It makes sense, said the blonde ninja, his tone falling just a little. Do you really think Iwa and Suna together will have the strength to resist Akatsuki and the crane? Harbin shrugged. Iwa has been rebuilding its military strength ever since its loss to Konoha almost 2 decades ago. My guess would be that if Iwa had been as strong during its war with Konoha as it is now, then the Leaf might have actually lost the war. Naruto sighed and grinned at the same time. The statement had been both somewhat insulting but simultaneously comforting. So you think we have a chance? Naruto probed. Harbin nodded. I think you have a very good chance of emerging as this conflict's victor. The crane's greatest weapon, secrecy, has been lost, and now you and your allies might even have the numbers to face them on even ground in the upcoming battle. The crane's last advantage is the support it draws from the ninja of Akatsuki, whom we can hopefully overpower and defeat. Right, said Naruto, straightening up. Time's wasting. Harbin nodded. Yes, we need to find this army and report back to Gaara. SC. Gaara sat at his desk scribbling away on a plain piece of paper, his gourd full of sand resting in the corner to his left. It had been 2.5 hours since Naruto and the ninja from Iwa, Harbin had left Suna to try and map out Akatsuki's movements. The Kazekage looked up as someone knocked on his door and called for his visitor to come in. The door opened and Sakura stepped inside. The kunoichi had traded in her customary red dress for a Titan robe splotched with brown and russet colors to act as a desert camouflage. She had also trimmed her pink hair to clean up the fraying ends. More noticeable than any of her changes in wardrobe, though, was the wide grin on Sakura's face. Behind the Haruno was a ninja standing only as tall as the kunoichi ahead of him, wearing an unremarkable green vest and black pants. The only thing about him less distinctive than his clothing was his face. Gaara's breath caught when he saw the ninja's headband. Bolted to the black cloth was a slim leaf of steel engraved with Iwa's motif. "Excuse me," said Sakura, her grin not breaking. "We have a visitor." The ninja from Iwa stepped forward and bowed respectfully as Gaara stood up and walked around his desk. "Sir, my name is Kamizuru Anshin," said the ninja of Iwa, standing up straight. "As my lord's liaison, I represent the Granite Army of the Earth Country. We recently received word from one of our associates that you and your village are soon to come under direct attack by our mutual enemy." Here the ninja paused and smiled, his eyebrows narrowing slightly. "We would like to extend offers of both friendship and support in this time of crisis." Gaara moved quickly but without sacrificing any of his dignity and bowed very slightly, but still more than a cage normally would have, and addressed the visitor. "Consider both accepted," said Gaara. "Now, what plans does your Granite Army have in store?" Anshin smiled and nodded once. Directly to the point, he noted, "At this very moment my lord is moving his army south towards Suna. We've scrambled our entire armed force, a group of 5,000 soldiers led by 200 ninja and supplemented by 500 warrior priests. Also, in reserve we have an additional 100 ninja on which we could call in an hour's notice, should their services be necessary." Gaara's expression lifted and Sakura clapped her hands once in celebration. The kunoichi broke in before Gaara could speak. "Before you ask," said Sakura, "I've already checked all of his credentials. He was carrying the executive seal of the Tsuchikage, as well as the marker of the Earth Country's daimyo. Both were still chakra encoded, so he really has the backing of the Rock Village and the Earth Country's official army." Originally Iwa had been building a force separate from the Earth Country itself, said the liaison. "However, as soon as we heard of Kiri's annihilation at Konoha's hands, we dissolved our differences and united entirely under one banner. When Konoha was destroyed, we decided that in the interest of general survival, the newly formed Granite Army should do everything within its power to ensure the survival of Suna, being that you're the last viable ninja village, and hope that the Wind Country would return the gesture. Needless to say, we've all been moving at a fevered pace." A knock on the door interrupted Gaara before he could say anything, but without a second thought Sakura reached out and pulled it open. Trina stood on the other side of the threshold. Her usual cool was missing and she seemed in obvious disarray, but nonetheless she bowed and addressed Gaara, her already high voice excited. "Kazekage-sama," she said quickly as her red eyes sparkled. She was trying to be respectful. "The wind's daimyo has arrived from the fortress." Gaara prodded for the kunoichi to continue. "Sir," said the woman with the dark red hair. "He's brought an army with him. There are 1,500 soldiers and 50 ninja waiting at the north gate to be let into the city." Gaara's mouth dropped open only a little at the news. When did he get word of this? "Sakura-sama," someone nearly shouted, bursting into the room. It was Shikamaru, panting and out of breath and leaning over to clutch his knees. He looked up at Gaara and the steward, grinning. "What is it?" asked Gaara. "What's happened?" "Relief," said the Nara. "A column of samurai and ninja from the Bird Country are at East Gate. Their leader is requesting an audience with you to discuss a possible coalition of forces." As if that weren't enough, even as I was coming to deliver the news, another column of ninja arrived. These said they were an alliance of the Fang and Claw countries. What's more, just then another group of ninja arrived. These said they were from the Noodle and Valley countries. All of them want to speak with you. The atmosphere of the room began to electrify. "Why did they come here?" asked Gaara. "How did they get by the crane?" Each leader said the same thing, said Shikamaru, that they had received a letter via Messenger Hawk in the name of the daimyo of the Earth Country warning them that a massive force of invaders had come to conquer the entire continent. The letter went on to say that a force capable of resisting the army was gathering at Suna, so each separate force began mobilizing as quickly as they could. Gaara's expression immediately warped with confusion and he turned to Anshin for answers. "What in the world is going on here?" the Kazekage asked the liaison. Anshin, whose face looked as baffled as Gaara's, could only shrug. "I'm not sure," he said quickly. "If the daimyo or the cage had sent out messages such as these, surely I would have been alerted to it, and I've heard nothing of such plans." "Well, this is an interesting development," said the Kazekage, walking towards the door and motioning for everyone to follow him. "We're going to prepare the conference room in the B wing," Gaara said quickly. Shikamaru, Please invite the leaders of all of these new arrivals to come to the conference room and inform them that their forces will have to wait outside of the city until the conclusion of our meeting. The Wind Daimyo's men are exceptions. Gaara, Sakura, Trina, and Anshin quickly strode out of Gaara's office and into the hall beyond his reception room. Shikamaru hastily took his leave, literally sprinting down the corridor towards the stairs. Less than an hour later in Gaara's palace, 12 people stood around a wooden table in one of the Sand Palace's beautifully decorated meeting rooms. The walls were hung with murals and cloths, while a chandelier made of ivory lit the windowless room. Gaara, Sasuke, Shikamaru and Sakura took up one section of the table, while the rest of the space went to the lords and commanders. Across from Gaara stood the Wind Daimyo, a titan man with sandy hair and an imposing figure flanked on either side by his 2 bodyguards. He looked maybe 22 or 23 years old, exceptionally young for a man whose reputation as a competent leader was known to most of the world. Adjacent to the guard on the Wind Daimyo's left were the leaders of the Claw and Fang countries' armed forces. Both men had a striking resemblance to one another, though the representative from the Claw was somewhat taller and his white robe contrasted with the Fang's orange garb. To the Wind Daimyo's right was the leader of the Bird country's contributing force. She was a woman of average height, but a slim build. Her brightly colored, down-lined tunic had no sleeves, revealing her pale but defined arms. Her hair was shoulder-length and the color of mahogany. Across her face, running from the tip of one of her pointed cheekbones to the other was a scar. It looked like a wound that hadn't been properly treated by a medic. The representatives of the Noodle and Valley countries stood to the woman's right, between her and Gaara. Both were young women who couldn't have been older than 20. Their fair complexions hinted that neither one spent much time in the sun, but the muscles beneath their skin tensed like the sinews of a hunting lion and their faces were hardened like a veteran's. Though there had been whispering and quiet conversing as the leaders and representatives filed into the room, Gaara was the first to speak to the group, addressing them all in his usual monotone. I believe I speak for everyone here, said the Kazekage, when I say that this is an extraordinary turn of events. My friends tell me that all of you, he gestured to the newcomers to Suna, were informed that a force to resist the crane was gathering here. How did you learn of this? Gaara had no desire to spook potential allies by letting on that he didn't plan any of this. The Wind Daimyo spoke first in a deep baritone voice. I received a message from the Daimyo of the Earth country, he said. It reported that Konoha had been utterly destroyed by the Crane organization and that the Crane soldiers were being led by a group of ninja known as Akatsuki. The Earth Daimyo said that the survivors were moving to Suna to regroup and plan their counterattack. Given that many of my forts throughout the wind have been destroyed by an unidentified group of attackers and another band of aggressors have been destroying listening posts all throughout the region, I can only assume that it's the Crane's assault on the wind beginning in earnest. I thought it would be wise to commit as many soldiers as I could to any kind of resistance before we were all killed. Wind villages are already disappearing. The Bird country, said the woman in the multicolored tunic, her voice as chirping as any flute, has also come under attack by the Crane. We've suffered enormous casualties and our entire population has been forced into hiding. The troops I've brought represent the remainder of our military. We've been forced to retreat into exile. Our country's land is lost and we had no choice but to seek help anywhere we can find it, so as soon as we received the message from the Earth Daimyo we came here hoping to find a means to resist the Crane. Gaara paused as the Bird representative finished her brief telling and then looked towards the representative from the Noodle country as she spoke up. My people, or the non-combatants, said the young woman, have been completely wiped out by the invaders. We did not know that the Crane organization was responsible, however what men I brought are all that remain of our population. I got word from, I presumed, the Earth Daimyo, that my men could find shelter here, so I came to Suna without hesitation. The news from the Valley country is the same, said the young woman next to the Noodle's representative. Our population was exterminated by the Crane in a day and my men have been moving around in secret for the past week. Gaara flinched, taken back by the news of the Valley country having come under assault so long before he heard anything about it. When did the Crane first begin its invasion? Asked the Kazekage. A week ago, said the leader of the Valley forces. 6 days ago, said the second woman. The first listening posts along our borders and in the river country began disappearing 8 days ago, said the Wind Daimyo. Our forts that have fallen came under attack within the last 4 days. The bird representative cleared her tea. 2 days, she said, at least since the invasion broke through our defenses. 3 days, said the Fang and Claw leaders at once. The taller of the two continued, our nations were assaulted simultaneously. Damn, Sasuke whispered. Konoha wasn't the beginning then, not by a stretch. Guess not, said Sakura, leaning towards Sasuke so she wouldn't have to speak as loudly. It was just the largest in scale. Maybe we got off easy though, almost 3% of our population has escaped to Suna over the past few days, double what I was expecting. It sounds like these other nations didn't even get that chance. The woman from the bird country raised her voice, drawing Gaara's attention away from the wind daimyo. So what do we do now? She asked. I've brought 200 samurai and 10 well-trained ninja. When do we go on the offensive? Hold on, said Gaara. I don't think we can. And I've brought 15 ninja leading an army of 100 soldiers, said the Claw representative. We're ready. Just say the word. Not yet, Gaara tried to say. We need 150 soldiers here, said the woman from the noodle country. We also have 5 ninja. And we can supply 90 soldiers and 10 ninja, said the leader of the Fang force. Slow down, Sasuke shouted, drawing every gaze in the room to himself. The Uchiha grimaced, having spoken before he'd thought through exactly what was on his mind. I think what Gaara is trying to say, he continued, is that we don't have enough information to go on the offensive against the Crane and Akatsuki. The wind daimyo nodded. He's right, said the tall man. For the Crane to overpower one of the forts that fell 2 days ago, they must have an army of no less than 1,000 soldiers, and they probably boast more than that unless the ninja leading their army are more powerful than anyone in this room. Shikamaru was struck by realization. The Crane has been busy cleaning up the wind's forts. That's why these other forces could get here in relative safety. What a lucky break for all of them. They probably are, said the richly adorned woman from the bird. My country was attacked by an army of about 5,000 soldiers. We couldn't track exactly how many ninja lead them, but I'm sure it wasn't more than 2 or 3. I saw 2 of their generals, a woman with strange powers over paper and another man whom we couldn't kill. Both of those ninjas said my strongest with seemingly minimal effort. Even after I cut off the man's head he reappeared, alive and well. Is that how you got the, Sasuke asked without thinking, tracing his thumb across the bridge of his nose to ask about the scar on the woman's face. Sakura bit the inside of her cheek, wondering why in the world Sasuke would ask such a thing at just the same time that Sasuke himself realized he had asked his question out loud. Much to both ninjas' relief, the woman laughed and shook her head once. No, she said in a tone somewhat lighter than before. Ex-husband, it's an old story that doesn't really matter now. Oh, Sasuke toned, wondering if she was joking and internally hoping that she was. At any rate, said the wind daimyo, what we need to do is formulate a defense against Akatsuki and the Crane. We know they're coming here, to Suna, and we know that they have somewhere between 2 and 4,000 soldiers being led by most likely between 2 and 4 strong ninja. What we don't know is how soon they'll be here, or how we should ready ourselves to defend the city. Or how we're going to take the fight to them once the defensive battle is over, added the bird woman. We don't know if we'll have the manpower to go on the offensive after this, said Shikamaru, exercising his new rank as head of security and giving himself permission to speak. It's a very real possibility that we're going to be said. We need to plan conservatively to prevent that from happening. Also, we don't know how many soldiers the Crane has in total. They could have 10 armies as big as the one they're throwing at us. True, said Sasuke, taking the floor, but if they did have the manpower to wipe us all out at once, as they could with 10 armies the size of the one Itachi is leading towards us now, why didn't they? The room bent all of its attention on Sasuke as the Uchiha continued. Think about it, said Sasuke. Why is it that up until Konoha was destroyed the Crane had only attacked smaller villages and small and isolated countries? My thought would be that it's because they don't have the strength to face down an alliance between the rest of the world and themselves, and it seems to me that we have exactly that. It's now the Crane versus the rest of us. They took out the smaller villages and countries because that would make it easier to ensure that no one could escape to warn the rest of the world. The Crane attacked Konoha in secret because, probably, it knew it couldn't beat us in a fair fight. It hasn't attacked Iwa yet because it's too busy trying to K off anyone who could ally with Iwa and increase the Earth country's already formidable strength. If that were the case, said Shikamaru, then it would only stand to reason that the majority of their success lies in the abilities of the ninja leading the infantry. The use of underhanded tactics and deceit can only benefit them so much now that we know the true intentions, meaning they'll have to rely more and more heavily on Akatsuki. So if we can manage to K the generals as Naruto and Haben suggested, the crane will waver and we might stand a viable chance of wiping them out. The hardest part will be ensuring that we get them all, said Gaara. Maybe, said the daimyo of the wind. Maybe not, the way wars are fought these days, with armies made of infantry supporting a few dozen ninja, the tactics are simple in principle. The ninja fight the ninja and the infantry fight the infantry. If one side loses all of its ninja, then its infantry will have to retreat or be wiped out by the special abilities of the opposing ninja. If one side loses all of its infantry, then the ninja will have to retreat or be overwhelmed by sheer numbers by the opposing forces. We may or may not have the advantage with our numbers as far as infantry are concerned, but it would seem that Akatsuki has only a few ninja, 10 or so, and we might be able to win by defeating them with superior numbers of ninja. There's only one problem, Sasuke chimed in. Itachi is at the head of the army moving against us. When I was under Orochimaru's control, he let it slip on one occasion that Itachi is the reason he left Akatsuki. According to Orochimaru, it's almost certain that Itachi is single strongest ninja alive. Anyone who tried to face him one-on-one or even with a group of allies would probably wind up very unsuccessful. How are we going to beat him? The room fell silent. Everyone present had at least heard of Uchiha Itachi and most had read his profile in their respective villages or countries' bingo book. All but one of them knew that they could never beat Itachi in a death match. Sakura cleared her tea after a moment's pause. She had stiffened herself and wore an expression like a convicted felon. I could do it, she said, loud enough to be heard but quiet as to not make a scene. Everyone in the room turned to look at the pink-haired kunoichi in surprise. How? Asked the woman from the bird country. Sakura swallowed the lump in her tea and forced herself to smile. I'll open the 8th gate. X. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.